So the Ghost series, the full title is Ghost Technologies Stroke Subjectivities, and I've been quite interested for a long time in the idea of a techno culture, in the sense that I think we're moving into an age where technology and culture are completely imbricated, in a way perhaps in a way that has never really been seen before, in the sense that so much of our lives now are mediated through technological innovations, through screen-based technologies, through social media platforms, through mobile phones, through GPS technologies, etc., that track every part of our lives. It's almost unthinkable now for us to wake up in the morning without some aspect of technological mediation. I think artists have been addressing this for quite a while, and I started to think about how questions in some of the debates some of the recent exhibitions I'd seen about art and technology. I felt as though there's something missing around the questions of race, around questions of racialized identities, around diaspora, migration issues. And I was aware that a number of Black and Asian artists had been addressing these issues from the early 80s and mid 80s in various forms, and that history hadn't really been spoken about or was not widely known. So the Ghost series really was about trying to think about and to bring to light some of those sort of key works, or some work that would kind of hint at or draw attention to this sort of alternative genealogy of art and technology practice. So I'm thinking about, for example, works by... In fact, a lot of my thinking for this series came about through thinking through Keith Piper's practice. Keith Piper is a multimedia artist who's been working, since the early 80s, and a lot of his work is consistently used cutting edge technology, but also addresses the social impact of technology on identity and on issues around race. So, for example, the issue of surveillance and the way that Black bodies have been surveilled, tracked, and used by various forces of law and order and governmental rationalities and governmental logics as forms of exclusion, and but also forms of resistance. How people have kind of resisted those technologies as well, and that's been quite a big theme of his work. And so a lot of my thinking initially was around his work, and I wanted to do some stuff around his work, which I did do in one of the projects I did. But I also wanted to kind of broaden that discourse and think about other artists who had engaged it. So I did a project with Shaila Kamari Berman, who is an artist, a Liverpudlian artist from Liverpool, but her parents came to Britain from India, from the Punjab. And Shaila has been working on print technologies for quite a while. And in particular, she had a series of works that she conducted in the mid to late 80s, which were self-portraits. And she did many, many different kinds of self-portraits using print and photocopy, and also painting over them as well. So kind of combining media, mixed media works in some respects. But really kind of, I think, mining the potential of reproductive technologies to reinvent your identity, to reinvent yourself, to kind of challenge stereotyped images of Asian womanhood that were prevalent in the media at that time, as submissive, as being, somehow, mute, powerless, etc. And she kind of reinvents herself in those images as very powerful, active. She's a martial artist in some of them. She's a model. She's a punk. And these are all multiple identities that Charlotte inhabited in her own life, and was reflected in the way that she used print technologies to explore that. And for me, that resonates very strongly with the way that current mobile selfie technologies, the way that people use selfies, right? People, again, you could say that the way that it's been used currently is a kind of narcissistic element. And I think with Charlotte's work, in some respects, reminds us that that kind of technology can be used as a form as a form of expression, as a form of liberation of the self from constrained images or constrained ideologies. So, in other words, it looks at the political potential, in my opinion, of technology's reproduction, very much in the mode in which Walter Benjamin talks about in his essay, the work of art in the age of technological reproduction, which was also an inspiration to the project. I feel like I'm kind of halfway through the project in some ways. I've staged a number of exhibitions of Shyla Berman, of Alia Syed, and of Keith Piper and Vishuni Kempadu, just as a way of getting students really to have a look at the work. So I had exhibitions at Chelsea and also at Central St Martin's. I also worked with the artists to do master classes with students. So that Alia Syed, for example, who made an experimental film called Panopticon Letters, which was a kind of experimental, quite abstract film inspired by Michel Foucault's use or description of the panopticon as a kind of prison technology which invades, or if you like, permeates the kind of modern rationality of contemporary societies. And she uses that in a kind of post-colonial context. But what Alia she did a very, very productive workshop with the MA documentary students of Prasad Rugani from LCC who came to the space, and we had a kind of discussion about the work. And Shyla Berman did a workshop with students from the MA Fine Art Digital from Camberwell, Jonathan Kearney, which has actually led to her now being practitioner in residence at Camberwell College for the year. So she's continuing some of that work. So there's ongoing discussions there, and it'll be interesting to see what emerges from that and to kind of track that discussion. And Keith did also a workshop with students from St Martin's, students and staff from St Martin's. So we've had some initial discussions around the works. I think the plan now is to have, I'm planning to do a symposium to invite other speakers and other writers to kind of engage with some of the works, but also some of the ideas behind the works, ideas around technology, ideas around what art, the kind of political potential of engaging with art, which is technologically mediated. And then generate some more, as I say, discussions, some more points of view, and to kind of edit a collection or some papers around this, which I hope will serve as a kind of reader, if you like, around the questions of art and technology, but focusing specifically on the engagement of race, racialized identities and migrant identities within that discussion. Obviously, technology is constantly shifting and changing. So there's an artist that I am working with, or have worked with, and I intend to work. I'm actually working with him on another project, but which will be really good to bring into the frame. An artist called Larry Champong, who works. He's been quite interested in gaming, among other things. But one of the projects that one of the projects he works on with an artist called David Blandy, and they work together, and they use the game engine of Grand Theft Auto. They kind of hack that game engine and change it and use it to create avatars of themselves. One is a black artist, Larry Champong, the other is a white artist, and they use it to have a kind of conversation about post-colonialism, and they focus specifically on the work of the Martinican psychiatrist, Frantz Fanon, who was a kind of revolutionary and theorist of kind of, in one of the influential theorists about post-colonial condition, if you like, and the psychological impact of colonialism, and the need to kind of unmask those colonial shackles that kind of keep people's imagination in check in the colonial situation. And in the film, they've made various films using this kind of gaming technology, which I think is a really interesting way of addressing this issue, and one which I think speaks to 21st century language, and which many, I think, young people can connect with. And there are other examples of artists, again, doing that, but that's one example I think I would definitely want to explore a bit more and bring into the frame.